a lot of you know, if you've been here a while or if you follow me on Instagram, you kind of know that I have this deep, unnatural passion for hats. And I don't discriminate. I like cowboy hats, I like baseball hats, I like dad hats, I like a page boy hat every once in a while. I love hats. And thank goodness that my wife really thinks about me because she launched a hat brand and it's called Styled by Breezy J. And she had this idea that, you know, you should feel good in the clothes that you wear, and you should feel, she's a stylist, so you should feel good in the clothes that you wear, and you should feel good in the hats that you wear. And so she created a hat brand, and it's a play on Easy Breezy because she's breezy, and everyone always says Easy Breezy. So she's made this play on Easy Breezy, and there's a collection of hats on her website, which I have all of them because I am obsessed again with hats. I'm also like obsessed with my wife, so it makes perfect sense. But there's one that says Easy Breezy. There's one that says Easy Breezy Beautiful Country Girl. There's one that says Easy Breezy Rich. There's really good options on the site. And she has been so kind in offering On the Daily Fam a discount. So I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you want to go shop, you can get $10 off a hat. You can go to buybreezyj.com, and Breezy is BREEZIE, buybreezyj.com. And you can use the code On the Daily at checkout for $10 off. And I'll put that in the show notes as well in case you forget. But go buy a hat, go support my wifey, but also just look really freaking cool because those hats will make you feel that way. Okay, let's get into this episode. On the Daily family, welcome back to season 4 of this podcast. This show is almost, next week, will be officially 4 years old. And in that time, we have come a long way, my friends. We are, I think there's close to 400 episodes. We've had over 1 million downloads. We are in every country, every continent except for Antarctica. And I feel like we're just getting started. I have so many I know that sounds so cliche, but I really have so many big plans for this show. And I'm really excited for you to kind of see and feel some of those changes in the new year. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for rocking with me all this time and just listening to me in your ears. Like I always visualize like my listeners like on a run listening to me, or I have a walking pad and I wake up in the morning and walk on my walking pad for 30 minutes and I always listen to a podcast. And so I always like imagine my listeners like on a walking pad or like on a run with their dog or driving in their car. And wherever you listen to this show, wherever you have listened to this show, I'm just so grateful. And this season 4 we're going bigger. Obviously, if you know me, you know that I go bigger. And so we're going bigger. We're going better. We're going to have more guests this season. We're going to have more, we're going to go deeper into the spiritual side of what I do. I think I've been moonlighting a little bit as like somebody who like tiptoes in that realm, but I'm actually very much like I've fully cannonballed into that realm. And so I think expect a lot more of that this season, and expect a lot more astrology and a lot more of the neurolinguistics programming. Expect a lot more conversations with really incredible people. And yeah, in this episode, I'm going to talk about something that kind of sucks to talk about, and that's grief. But grief through the lens of activation. My dad also died 4 years ago. He actually died like 3 days before this podcast officially launched. And it was a really weird time in my life that I now have a certain amount of clarity, I think, and I look back on a little bit. So I want to talk about that today because along with 4 years of the podcast, we are also 4 years since my dad passed away. So this episode, we're going to dive into activation and these moments in our life that feel like everything is falling apart, but actually become the catalyst for something so much bigger. I'm going to talk about other things other than my dad dying. I'm going to talk about divorce, and I'm going to talk about, some stuff I experienced in childhood and just how those moments could have been viewed one way, but the way that I chose to handle them was really the catalyst for everything that has come after it. And so I hope you listen, and welcome back to season 4 of On the Daily. Let's go. Break the Matrix is still available for enrollment. This is my program all about the deconditioning process. So unlearning all of the things that ever made you feel anything less than the best version of yourself, the shiniest version of yourself, the most magical version of yourself, and remembering like who you are underneath that all, like underneath all of the programming, underneath all the trauma. This program is really designed to help you do that. And it's like become abundantly clear to me that I actually kind of fucking hate the coaching industry in a lot of ways because it markets and like preys on like your independent or your dependency wounds or like the belief you have that you're not good enough. And it like kind of preys on that. And I just am not, I don't vibe with that energy. And I just think that there's nothing wrong with you. And you're a soul that came here to grow. And every version of you, every iteration of you, every level of you is here to learn something new. And it's going to do that a lot easier if you unlearn the belief that there's anything wrong with you. So Break the Matrix is the program that does that. And it does that through the lens of human design and astrology and neurolinguistics programming and somatic healing. So we don't just, it's not just like a bunch of Excel spreadsheets about the history of psychology. It's really getting into your subconscious mind and really breaking down all of these beliefs that you have that have maybe made you anything less than the most powerful version of you. So I hope that you take a look at it. There is a link in the show notes, but you can go to daniellemcclary.com/breakthematrix and you can get the New Year's discount on that program. There are a few spaces left in the retreat in October to Costa Rica as well. That's a part of that. There's a bundle that you can get the course half off if you come to the retreat as well. So there's lots of options. And I just hope that you take a look at it because that program is amazing. And it's officially mine. I applied for a trademark about 18 months ago, and it is officially Break the Matrix is mine. I own it. So cheers to more of Breaking the Matrix. All right, let's get into this episode. Okay, January 16th, 2021, my dad died. And this was a man who was my best friend in the entire world. He loved and he celebrated me better than anybody else in my life. He really, really understood me on a level that I think most people don't or can't. And obviously, like, it's my dad. So, like, naturally, he's going to know me pretty well. But him dying really rocked me, and it sent me in this spiral of kind of like questioning who I was or why I was, or like what I like. I just remember thinking like, what am I even doing? Like many times after that happened, like, what am I actually doing? What is actually happening? But I was a personal development and mindset coach at the time. So I know how to get through grief. I help clients do it all the time. And so I kind of just like jumped into that, like really jumped into that and avoided a lot of healing and a lot of grief until about a year after he died. And then it wasn't until about the year mark that I was like, oh my God, I have not done any of this work that I need to do on myself. And that is really crazy to think about. So I hit a energetic wall. I burnt out completely. I literally like burnt down a business that I had built to a multiple 6-figure business, burnt it down, couldn't do it anymore. I was depressed. I was, my nervous system was dysregulated. I had cortisol issues out the ass. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized I needed to really heal. And then that was kind of a huge catalyst for a huge spiritual awakening I had in 2022 and 2023. Now, what I want to say about this is these moments that we have, grief, death, trauma, it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole of why did this happen to me? I don't understand why this is happening. But it's really important to understand that nothing is actually inherently good, bad, right, or wrong. That is all an idea of the Matrix, and it's what the Matrix and humanity within the Matrix has applied to our existence, right? Like we've applied the labels of good, bad, right, and wrong. Because of that, we've now wired ourselves to feel not good enough, to feel inadequate, to feel bad about ourselves in some way. And when we are programmed that way and wired that way, we are always running from something. And it's running from ourselves is what it is. We're running from ourselves. And I think when my dad died, I ran from myself in that way because I believed, because I was a mindset and personal development coach, I believed that if I showed grief and if I showed myself falling apart, that I was weak or that I was wrong or that it was bad. And the truth is, our souls came here to grow. That's what we came here to do. We came here to grow. And that growth is physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's mental. But we are here to grow. And every version of us, every level of us is going to do that. And it's going to learn a lesson that it was meant to learn so that we can carry that into the next version of ourselves. But that does not mean that anything is wrong. That does not mean that anything is bad. It just means that we are going through a lesson. And I think what we forget is the universe, God, source, whatever you call it, whatever resonates with you most. There's this belief we have that things happen to us, but really everything happens for us, everything. And my dad dying was no exception. Like that happened for me, as awful as it was, and as painful as it is, it happened for me because there were lessons that I needed to learn that I could not learn while he was alive. And I want to explain that. But before I explain that, I just want you to hear that piece that sometimes the most painful things we go through are actually our biggest activations. They are the initiation that we need to kind of be the catalyst for us to move into whatever version of us is coming next. Even though it hurts and it sucks. And even though I would trade it all if I could see my dad again, which is actually like a really weird thought, by the way. I kind of sidebar, like that's a really weird thought to have to kind of cope with. Like I've grown so much and I've done so many things and I'm such an all the way person. Like I don't do anything half-assed. Like I am all the way in on something. And I have been, and I always have been, but I have been especially since my dad died. But to know that deep down, like if somebody came to me and was like, hey, you could trade everything that you've achieved, everything that you've been through over the last couple of years, you could trade it all and like you would get to see your dad again. And I'd be like, no problem, sign me up. Like no questions asked, like send it, full send. And that's a really weird thing to think about because, you know, when you're such an all the way person, to know that you would trade it all is weird because it kind of makes me sometimes question like my own integrity, which luckily like that's probably not going to happen. Like I'm probably not going to get that opportunity. So great. We'll just continue to mask it. Okay. So I want to talk about like why that moment of my dad dying really allowed me to heal things. And what I mean by that. So I'm going to share something with you that I have never shared publicly, really. I've shared inside of my containers and I've shared inside my programs and stuff, but this will be the first time I share this like live. When I was like 14, I think, my mom actually like kicked me out of her house. And I want to preface, and I don't know why I need to preface this. I think because there's always this belief that if you get kicked out, you were like a bad kid. And maybe that's just like another layer that I need to address within myself. But I wasn't a bad kid. I was actually like a really good kid and I got really good grades. And I was like never the kid that anybody had to like tell to do her homework. Like it was just, I just did my homework and I was always on top of my grades and I was always on top of my work because I was a firstborn daughter and I was an overachiever. And like, I felt like if I wasn't that way that I was failing. So like the trauma was there early on, but I was sassy, very sassy. I still am. Spoke my mind. Didn't want to do anything that I didn't want to do. Made sure that people knew that. And my mom had a really hard time with that. I also think my mom really always resented how close I was with my dad because my dad cheated on her when I was young, like when I was born. Before I was born, I think my dad was having an affair with whoever, probably multiple people, and was a terrible husband. Terrible husband. Great dad. Terrible husband until he met my stepmom. And, you know, he hit his maturity way later in life. My mom unfortunately took the brunt of that. So my mom always had a lot of resentment for my dad. And I think I've always reminded my mom a lot of my dad. So there was always a lot of resentment toward me because I always was really close with my dad. And, you know, I can imagine as like a mother, that's hard when you're like, your dad treated me terribly and like, you're so close with him. But now I realize like my mom has like unhealed stuff that she needs to work on and she needs to figure out and she needs to actually like go deeper with herself with, you know, and that is what it is, right? Like everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have. But when I was 14, we butted heads a lot and I never wanted to do my chores. I never wanted to clean up my room. I never wanted to like do my laundry, which now I'm figuring out. I actually thought for a long time that I was like the only kid like that. And I really thought there was like something wrong with me. But now I'm realizing like, especially like as a parent with other mom friends, everyone's like, what 14-year-old does want to do the dishes and clean their room? And I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe there wasn't anything wrong with me. Maybe I was just like a normal kid who was figuring out her boundaries. Right. So that came to a head and I had a mouth on me, so I'm sure I said, I don't remember what I said, but I'm sure I said something very between the eyes at the time. And I came home from school one day and my mom kicked me out of the house and made my dad come get me and told him that I didn't live there anymore. And my dad was livid. But I remember when I got in my dad's car, I was crying. I was really upset. I remember when I got in my dad's car, he looked at me and he said, "You're never going to have to feel this way again." And I was like, I didn't really know what that meant then, except for like, yeah, because you're taking me away from this place. Like it was a lot of angst at that moment. But I think what happened in that moment was it was solidified in me that I was disposable. And if I wasn't the way that somebody else expected me to be, they would leave me. Whether that was true or not, that's the way that my ego and my subconscious mind took it and said, like my subconscious mind took it as, oh, so because I'm not who you need me to be, I'm disposable to you and you'll just get rid of me, which was hard. You know, it was hard. At the time, I was angsty and there was one thing I wasn't going to do. It was going to let anybody see that. So I very much played it off like it didn't bother me. And like, I was just really happy to live at my dad's, but I was hurt. I was really, really hurt. And I was really sad because, you know, a 14-year-old really needs their mom. And, you know, there's a lot of like changes that happen with a 14-year-old girl. And I I think now that I have a child, I don't have a daughter, but I have a son, and I look back and I think like I needed a mother. I actually needed someone to lean in. And, you know, I think my mom was, again, I think my mom was doing the best she could with the resources she had. But there's always moments where at least there were up until about a year and a half ago when the story is going to progress. There were a lot of moments through my 20s where I said like, yeah, everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have. But like, damn, I wish you had more resources at the time. Like, I really wish you had more resources because, there's never been an apology for that. There's never been, there's been a lot of, well, if you wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have done this. Like, there's been a lot of that, but there's never been really any apology. And I think as a parent, I can look back on that and I can go, like, there's nothing, like there are zero things that would make me kick my son out of my house. Like, there's zero things that he could do. And maybe that's just because I have more resources than my mom did. And obviously, like, I'm the Pluto and Scorpio generation. So my generation is here to heal generational patterns. So I've done a lot of healing so that my son doesn't have to inherit the same things that I inherited. And like, the way that my mom treated me was the same way her parents treated her, like it's generational. And it's not wrong. It's not bad. It just is. And my soul chose to come here to learn these lessons. But so my point in all this is from a very young age, I had abandonment wounds. And I had a belief that I needed to prove myself. And I always had to be perfect. And I always had to be an overachiever. And I always had to be available. Otherwise, I wouldn't be worthy of love or success or any of the things. And that manifested as I got older as like always getting straight A's, like top of my class, dance captain, professional dancer as soon as I graduated, I was like moving to London to go dance and like work. And it just always was, I was always doing the most. And I didn't realize until later that it was because I was like programmed that that's what I had to do in order to get love. But I didn't realize that until my dad died, because my dad was the opposite of that energy. My dad was the opposite of abandonment, right? Like there was nothing I could have done that would have made my dad like not like me. Like I was the sunshine, the moon, and the stars to my dad. Like I could have farted and he would have celebrated it, and like nothing I could have done, everything I did, he was always just like, my daughter is the best thing in the entire world. Like he just really went hard for me. And that allowed me to mask the abandonment wound and the motherhood wound that I had for a really long time until my dad died. And then this person that's always been your biggest fan, always been your biggest champion, always, like, my dad was the first person I told when I lost my virginity. Like, that's how close my dad and I were. Like, I literally lost my virginity and then immediately went and let my dad know. Like, I didn't realize how uncommon that was. That's just the relationship we had. We were just very close, and he trusted me to make my own decisions. And, in high school, like I was allowed to go to high school parties because he knew that I wasn't going to fuck it up. Like he knew that I wasn't going to like come home wasted. He knew that I wasn't going to like, and I made mistakes and there were consequences. Like I remember I got my license when I was, 16, and you're not allowed to drive anybody in your car for the first 6 months. I definitely did not listen to that. And I piled all my friends into my car at lunch, and we all had off-campus passes from high school, and we got to go to lunch off campus. And I piled everyone into my car, and we went to Taco Bell, and I got caught, and I was in a lot of trouble. So it's not like my dad didn't reprimand me, but it was always with respect. It was like, I'm giving you this, and in return, you have to give, like, it's an exchange of energy, right? It wasn't ever like, he never gaslit me, where I always felt like with my mom, there was always this, like, you love your dad more than you love me. You always want to be with your dad. And, my mom told me that my dad had an affair on her when I was very young, like way too young, wait, I mean, I think I was like, I don't know for sure, but I was probably like my son's age. I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And I just don't think any 7 or 8-year-old needs to hear that. Now, again, I don't want you to hear this and be like, oh my God, wow, she's really like mad at her mom. I'm really not mad at my mom. Like, I love my mom very much. I wish we had a better relationship. I also am like no longer the person that's going to try to prove that I'm worthy of her love. Like I've healed that in me, which is what I needed to do to heal and to be a better mom and to be a better partner. And and so my 20s, like I pushed away relationships. I got married at 20, I got divorced, which was a pattern, right? Like it was a generational pattern. Like I didn't let anybody too close to me because deep down I was deeply afraid of being abandoned. And I wasn't consciously aware of all of this at the time. And then, I got in a relationship with my son's dad, like pushed him away, like never let him too close, but like also like very much wanted to be taken care of. And it was just like this weird dynamic all the time. I was constantly burning out as a fitness instructor because I just wanted people to love me and I just wanted them to see how great I was. And I just did the most. I just did whatever I could for them to see me and all the things, right? Accessible and available 24/7. And it wasn't until my dad died that all of that came crashing down. And I think it's because this person that went so hard for me was now not there. And I was left with, oh, wait, now I feel like an orphan because like I don't actually have a parent like that anymore. And it was a catalyst. Dad dying was a catalyst for me. It was a really big activation and initiation into, I think, a lot of the version of me that you hear now on this podcast, that you see on Instagram, that you've worked with in my programs. That moment that shook me was such a catalyst for who I am today. And when it happened, I would have never known that, because when it happened, that scene in a movie where like somebody's moving in slow motion and the world is moving a million miles a minute around them. That's how it felt. If you've ever lost a parent that you're close, or anybody, I guess, that you're close to, that's how it feels. And, everybody's kind of there with you for a couple weeks and then they get back to their normal lives, but you're just like still left there moving in slow motion. And like, it's weird. It's weird. And so I would have never known that when it happened, that's the reason. But a friend of mine, her name is Vili, and she's so gifted. She works a lot with like womb magic and helping women heal their womb and their motherhood and their sisterhood wounds. And she's just so brilliant and so talented. And I've done some sessions with her. And one of the things that she helped me to understand was my dad didn't leave me. My dad, she's like, I want you to visualize like you were both in like a temple together and he was like Buddha or something, and you're learning all of the lessons from him that you need to learn, and then you learn them, and then you actually were the one that walked away. And when she kind of taught me that, it really did stick, because like I did learn everything that I was meant to learn from my dad, and we all have soul contracts, and we're here to accomplish certain things, and we're here to learn certain things, and it's not up to us when somebody we love is gonna, my dad, I can only hope that my dad came here and he did everything he was supposed to do in this life. It's interesting because he was a triple Gemini Sun, Moon, and Rising, but also a Gemini Mars and a Gemini Mercury, like very Gemini. So Gemini in the first house, but he also had a South Node in Gemini. So South Node was in Gemini, and he had his Gemini stellium. So my gut tells me that my dad's this life was a karmic life. Like he was here to repeat. It was like in a video game. If you didn't make it to the next level, like you have to go back in and you have to like repeat certain things. That's kind of like the gut impression that I got about this life that my dad just had. And I've done some Akashic reading, like Akashic records reading with a friend of mine, Kelly. And we've kind of come to that as well, that like that's like what my dad was here to do. So he was here to learn and to repeat certain things, but I have to believe that he did that. And I learned everything I was meant to learn from him. So I actually walked away. And since then, it's like, if I wouldn't have ever lost my dad, I would have never like had the courage to like leave SoulCycle. And, I even think about like my divorce. I got married when I was 20, and a lot of people don't know that. Not to my son's dad, to my high school sweetheart. I got married when I was 20, and I'll never forget the day of the wedding. My dad was like, if you want to go, like, he paid for the whole thing, by the way. And he literally was like, if you want to walk away, I will go get the car and we will leave, no questions asked. And like, he just knew. He knew that it wasn't something I really wanted to do. But like at the time, it like seemed fun. And like, I'm a Sagittarius. So I'm like, well, let's fuck around and find out. It ended up being like the best thing that I could have done because I got to see the world. I lived in London. I got to tour. Like, I went to like 28 countries. Like, we saw the world. And it was amazing. And it was exactly what I needed at that period of my life. I outgrew it, but it was exactly what I needed. And but I think about even that moment, like that divorce like rocked me because, you're a kid of the product of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 2. My dad was divorced like 4 times before he met my stepmom, who was his soulmate. Like, I mean, I was a product of divorce. And so when I first got divorced, I was like, fuck, like here I am repeating these fucking patterns that, I wasn't going to repeat, but I hadn't healed the abandonment wound that made me that way. So of course I'm going to get divorced, but that rocked me. And I got really depressed. And unfortunately, like my ex had a lot of mental health issues and kind of like turned everything around on me and made it me feel like it was my fault and like told my friends that like I was suicidal. Like it was really, really crazy. But, when you're in those moments, you actually start to believe it. It's like when you're gaslit that hard, you actually start to believe it. And I had been gaslit by my mom as a kid, telling me that I'm like too cocky, too full of myself. And I started to believe it. And so then like, you go to have this career in dance and you go to have a career in acting and you always self-sabotage because there's a part of me that like believed that like if I was too shiny that I would be left and I would be rejected. And so I kind of always hid myself a little bit, which is like interesting to think about now. But, if I would have never gotten divorced, I would have never started a career at SoulCycle because I got divorced and I started a beautiful 10-year career at SoulCycle that healed me in so many ways. It gave me like a community and it showed me friends because I kind of isolated myself a little bit when I was married because I was like trying so hard to be what this person needed me to be. And breaking that and choosing to walk away and spiritually healing a lot of things, I was able to like find this new beautiful community at SoulCycle. And it was a beautiful 10-year career. Like I have so much love and so much reverence for that place. But I would have never met my son's dad. I met him at SoulCycle and we fell madly in love and I would have never gotten my son out of it. And I ended up meeting Breezy, my wife, at SoulCycle, and I would have never done that. Like there's so many things that divorce was like this catalyst into this next version of me. And then my dad dying was the catalyst for me to heal my addiction to chaos and my addiction to burnout and my addiction to struggle and my addiction to my abandonment wounds. It was the catalyst for me to heal a lot of things, which is so crazy because you would think that like to heal a motherhood wound or an abandonment wound like caused by your mother. And I don't even think that my abandonment wound was fully caused by my mother because my parents got divorced when I was 2. And the very first memory I have is I was sitting on a bed and my dad and my mom were like screaming at each other, like from the bedroom in the bathroom. And I just like, I have this memory of it. And, so like my very first memory was a traumatic one and my dad left. Like my dad and my mom got divorced. So like I think the abandonment wound was caused from like going through that as like a 2-year-old was like, because before 8 you're just a walking subconscious. Like everything you're taught is like that's a rule now. And so I think there was just this like, I think from a very young age, there was a belief that like, I better be good or I'm going to be left. But that was like reiterated when my mom like kicked me out and like reiterated when I like, didn't get a part in a play. And it was, things are just like reinstated and it's called like belief stacking. So it's like every time something happens, your ego goes, see, if you're not perfect, you're going to get left. Like people leave you. But I was able to finally heal that when my dad died, that I was able to kind of take a look at it and be like, it's it's not actually that I think I'm better than everyone. It's not actually that I think I'm, that I'm too cocky or that I'm too shiny. It's not that like I said, it's not that I think I'm better than everyone. It's actually that I'm just no longer proving that I'm good enough. I'm no longer proving that I'm good enough. And that really healed a lot in me. I was able, I think metaphorically, I was always like holding the door open for my mom to like do the right thing and like apologize and like do the work on herself so that like we could heal. But like she hasn't, and that's fine. She doesn't have to. This is her, she has her own soul contract. But I was able to let go. I was able to stop fighting for that love. Like, oh, maybe if I just like forgive her, or like maybe if I just like, put my needs aside, and like if I just like if I just stay quiet and like let her say what she's going to say, then like maybe she'll love me more. Like that's like the belief, right? And like that's not true, because everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have. But it wasn't until I lost my dad that I was actually able to do that, because while he was alive, I was able to mask that really well. I didn't have to heal it because I had my dad, right? But then what was really cool is like after I healed this motherhood wound a little bit, and I don't think I've like fully healed it. Like I think this will probably, everything is, healing is not linear, it's cyclical. So like it'll come back around and I'll have to heal it on a deeper level. But for now, I've healed it in a way where like I had a really hard time with like relationships with women that were a little older than me. So like motherly figures. I've always had a really hard time with that. I've either felt them to be condescending, or I ended up like being their coach. And which I love, by the way. I love that. I definitely didn't want to say that was a bad thing. I love when clients who are like in their 50s and 60s come to me, because I do have like a wisdom about me that I think I really can help women that are in that stage of life. So anyway, I digress. But I always felt like women were condescending. And it actually wasn't that they were condescending. It was that I wasn't allowing myself to be nurtured the way that I needed to be, because I was so afraid that I was going to be abandoned. And so once I healed that motherhood wound, I was actually able to like develop a better relationship with my stepmom, which is amazing, because it's like my dad's no longer here, but like my stepmom and I are so close. And like she's one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. And I'm just so grateful that she's in my life. And I'm so grateful that like I get to call her mom. And even my wife's mom, I have a great relationship with her now, which we didn't in the beginning, because I pushed people away. And I have a great relationship with my son's dad's mom. So my ex's mom, who is my son's grandma, I have a great relationship with her. And it feels really good to be able to have these kind of like loving, nurturing relationships with older women that in the past I would have pushed away because I felt they were, quote, condescending, but like they weren't. They were just trying to nurture me, and I wasn't allowing myself to be nurtured. So through this, I've been able to get closer to my wife too, because I've been able to like admit that I want to be nurtured, and like who I am at work is not who I want to be at home. I'm able to be a better mom to my son, like I'm able to have conversations with him. Like if I'm feeling overstimulated as a mother, because hello, mothers, we get overstimulated. I'm able to have those conversations with him without feeling like he's going to like leave me or like love his dad more than me. And I've healed the relationship. I've been able to like really heal the relationship with his dad and I. Like we are friends and we co-parent so beautifully together. Like there should be a what is it? A reality show about our dynamic, because it's beautiful and it's not perfect and it can be messy, but it's amazing. And our son is so secure, and he has such a secure attachment style because of the work that we've done on ourselves and the work we've done together. But all of that was that when my dad died, it was such a catalyst for me to really dive deep onto that stuff. So all this to be said, I could probably talk about this forever, but I'm not going to. I'm going to end it with like, there's been a lot of pain in the last few years on planet Earth, and there's a huge shift that's happening. Obviously, Pluto just moved into Aquarius, so there's a lot of astrological shifts that are happening in the collective. The North Node is moving into Pisces, which is such a beautiful time for like dreams and intuition and following our intuition, and healing a lot of the rigidity that maybe we've been having for the last few years. and before that, it was in Taurus. So like, for the past like 3 years, we've been in very like rigid energy, rigid, fiery energy. And so the collective is shifting to more of from an I lead energy to an I trust energy. But there's been a lot of pain, and there's been a lot of death and rebirth, and there's been a lot of healing happening on the planet. And I want you to know that whatever you've gone through in the last few years, there's these moments throughout history where it's a catalyst. We go through our own catalysts, and the collective goes through a catalyst, right? So 9/11 was a catalyst. COVID was a catalyst. My dad dying was a catalyst. Like, you maybe went through a divorce, or like have been through death or trauma or grief. Catalysts. And I want you to think about who you became on the other side of those experiences, because that's the universe's way of being like, hey, it's time to switch timelines. It's time to jump timelines. But we don't ever get to a new timeline by hating ourselves. We don't ever get to a new timeline by running from the one that we're in. We have to accept the situation, and we have to heal through it. And then we move into the next one, like almost like merging onto a new freeway. So think about that. Think about these moments that you've had that have felt like everything is falling apart. And then reflect on actually like what happened after that. Like, have you let things happen after that? Maybe you're still in it and you're like, no, the world is ending. But like, think about the catalyst that you have underneath you right now to push you forward into whoever you're here to become next. Because it really is beautiful. And it's such a beautiful testament to the universe, God, whoever has our back always. And we don't always get, what's this saying? You don't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. And I do believe that you do get what you need, whether or not it's what you want, or whether or not it goes the way you thought it would go. It's going to go the way that it needs to go in order for you to heal and grow and become a better version of yourself. Because at the end of the day, that is what our soul is here to do. It is here to grow, and it's going to do that mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, etc. If you liked this, let me know. Come on into Instagram and tell me about it. I want to hear your thoughts. If you have any experience with this, obviously, this is kind of a deep topic to start back season 4 with, but I hope that there's an optimism to this. Like, whatever you're going through, it's happening for you, and like, it's just preparing you for the next version of you, which is going to be even more beautiful, even more healed, even more at peace, right? Because that's evolution. That's what we're here to do. So I love you all. And we will be back next week. I'm going to tell you all about this Pisces North Node transition and what it means for your human design and your astrology. So make sure you come back next week if you want to hear that. And please, 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 one of the ways that I grow this show is through you sharing it. So if you do have some time and you liked what you heard, please go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a review so that every time, it's like the algorithm, right? Every time you leave a review, every time you leave a 5-star review, you write a review, the algorithm pushes it out to more people. And that's my goal. So if you haven't and you have time, you have a couple minutes, please go and give us some love, and I'll see you next week. Bye.